The Alien Council, a collective of the galaxy's most powerful beings, watches a routine scan of Earth's warship, an old, forgotten relic from a long-lost world. To their shock, the scan reveals an unstoppable weapon hidden within humanity's seemingly obsolete vessel. As fear and disbelief grip the Council, they begin to realize that humanity's destruction of their empire is inevitable. The power shift is sudden and irreversible. The Alien Council chamber was eerily quiet, the hum of advanced machinery the only sound breaking the silence. It was a place of power where the most influential beings in the galaxy convened to discuss matters of life and death, fate and empire. Their cold eyes scanned the galaxy through a network of vast, multidimensional systems, watching civilizations rise and fall with the passing of eons. Today, however, the attention of the Council was focused on a seemingly insignificant world, Earth. The humans had been deemed irrelevant, nothing more than a primitive species, a footnote in the galaxy's vast history. It had been centuries since humanity had last posed any threat to the galaxy, long forgotten after they had nearly destroyed themselves in their own wars. Now the only trace of humanity that remained was an aging warship, the USS Artemis, a relic from an era long past. The Council members, insectoid beings of immense intellect, observed the ship on their holographic screens. A routine scan had been ordered to confirm its continued insignificance, something to pass the time as they discussed more pressing matters. The USS Artemis had been dormant for decades, forgotten by the galaxy. Its engines were silent, its weapons systems barely functional. But as the scan data began to flood their screens, something was off. The ship is emitting unusual readings, the lead Council member said, his voice deep and calm, yet laced with curiosity. Activate full diagnostic analysis. The data analyst, a small, nervous being with 4 pairs of eyes, quickly adjusted the settings. The holograms around him flickered as the scan deepened, tracing every corner of the ship. The results were still far from alarming until they weren't. A moment of stunned silence passed before the technician spoke again, his voice trembling. "This can't be right. The energy signature is impossible. This ship, Captain, has weapon systems that exceed anything we've ever encountered by a factor of 10. The Council members exchanged confused glances. Impossible. They had dismissed humanity's technology centuries ago, and yet now it was showing readings of something far beyond the known limits of galactic warfare. The USS Artemis was old, dilapidated, but it was emanating something far more powerful than any of them had anticipated. The Council leader leaned forward, his mandibles twitching in agitation. "Are you suggesting that this ship, this fossil from Earth, possesses technology capable of destroying us?" The technician stammered, trying to control his panic. I can't explain it, but the data is clear. This ship, this relic, is not what it seems. It's armed with an unknown form of energy, and it's drawing power from something beneath the ship, something we've never seen. The Council leader's eyes narrowed. "Run a full simulation. I want every detail. If this ship truly possesses the power to threaten us, we need to know immediately." The room fell into an uncomfortable stillness as the technician quickly entered commands, running simulations and models faster than anyone could track. Minutes passed, but to the Council, it felt like hours. As the simulation completed, a shocking revelation came to light. The USS Artemis wasn't just a warship, it was a weapon, hidden beneath its seemingly crumbling surface. A dormant AI was awakening, one that had been kept secret for centuries, designed by a forgotten generation of humans who had feared exactly what the galaxy had forgotten. The ability to annihilate entire fleets with a single strike. A holographic image of the ship appeared on the central screen, overlaid with glowing symbols that represented its hidden weapons. The council stared in stunned silence as they realized what they were looking at, a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen. "This is no ordinary ship," the technician said, his voice quiet but filled with dread. "It's a doomsday device, and it's been lying dormant this entire time." A long pause followed, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The council had been too certain of their dominance, too blind to see the truth. They had mocked Earth, dismissing humanity as nothing, more than a dying species. But now they were looking at the truth of their own undoing. The council leader straightened up, his voice low and filled with quiet horror. The humans didn't just survive. They were biding their time. They rebuilt, they hid, and now they have something more powerful than we could ever imagine. His mandibles clicked in frustration as the implications hit him. "We've allowed this. We underestimated them, and now we must pay the price. Initiate immediate fleet mobilization. We must prepare to face Earth." The technician hesitated before responding. "Sir, the simulations suggest that if the USS Artemis is allowed to reach its full potential, it could destroy our entire fleet with a single strike. There is no known defense against it." A chill ran through the council. Members, the Faith and Empire, the greatest military force in the galaxy, had been brought to the brink of destruction by a single ship from Earth. The scale of the mistake was staggering, and now they were faced with the harsh reality of their underestimation. "We have no choice," the leader said, his voice cold and resigned. "We must eliminate the humans before they can activate this weapon." The room was still as they realized the magnitude of the situation. The Faith and Empire had long prided itself on its technological superiority, but now they were facing a weapon that could wipe them out in an instant. A weapon that humanity had hidden away, waiting for the moment to strike. As the council's leaders activated the fleet mobilization orders, they looked at the technician, their eyes filled with both awe and fear. "What else are we missing?" the leader asked. "What have we overlooked?" The technician swallowed, a bead of sweat dripping down his brow. "I've only scratched the surface. There are still more secrets aboard that ship. We've only seen a fraction of its potential." The council leader's face twisted with a grim expression. "Then we must move quickly. The humans have made their move. We must make ours, or we will be wiped out." The news of the USS Artemis's secret weapon spread like wildfire across the galactic network. The Faith and Empire, once unshakable, had been thrown into turmoil. The alien council, in their isolated chamber, were still reeling from the discovery of humanity's hidden strength. They had expected humanity to remain weak, a broken species living in the ruins of their former glory. Instead, they now faced a threat more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The USS Artemis was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a ticking time bomb that could wipe out the Faith and fleet in an instant. As the council leader and his fellow members debated their next move, the words they spoke were heavy with the weight of impending doom. The Faith and Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for it. "Have we confirmed the weapons capabilities of the USS Artemis?" the council leader asked, his voice tinged with frustration. The technician who had first discovered the ship's hidden weapon systems nodded. His many eyes darted nervously as he ran through the data once more. "Yes, sir. The USS Artemis has a cloaking device, multiple layers of defense, and, most troubling, an energy cannon of unimaginable power. If we do not act now, they could destroy us. We cannot afford to wait for another surprise." Another council member, a towering figure with dark green scales, growled. "We must strike before they can unleash their weapon. This ship cannot be allowed to reach its full potential." The council leader's expression darkened. He knew the truth of those words. The Faith and Empire had been in power for centuries, but their arrogance had clouded their judgment. They had believed that humanity was a mere shadow of its former self, incapable of ever becoming a threat. But the USS Artemis was a symbol of humanity's resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, they had the will to survive and the ingenuity to rise from the ashes. "The humans will not stop here," the leader continued, his voice steady but filled with a growing urgency. "They will strike when they are ready. We must move quickly, and we must crush them before they can unify." The council members nodded, their expressions grim. They had all seen the same thing. A galaxy that had long considered humanity insignificant was now awakening to the true power of Earth's forgotten warriors. There was no turning back now. The Phaethon Empire would either eliminate humanity or they would fall. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Artemis, Captain Elizabeth Hawke was preparing for the inevitable. The humans had already proven themselves in the first strike. They had decimated the Phaethon flagship with a single shot, sending shockwaves throughout the galaxy. But Hawke knew that one battle, no matter how decisive, would not be enough. The Phaethon Empire would not go down without a fight. They would regroup, rebuild, and return with a vengeance. Hawke stood on the bridge of the USS Artemis, her gaze fixed on the stars. She had seen what her people were capable of, but she had also seen the fear in the faces of those around her. The Phaethon Empire was not a force to be taken lightly. Their fleet was vast, and their technology was advanced. But humanity had always been a species that adapted and fought back, no matter the odds. "Captain, we've intercepted another transmission from the Phaethon Empire," Lieutenant Brooks reported, his voice tense. "They're assembling their fleet for a counterattack." Hawke's expression hardened. "We've been expecting this. How much time do we have?" "Not long. Their fleet is already mobilizing. They're coming for us." Hawke nodded. "Then we'll meet them head on. We're not running from this fight. We've waited too long for this moment." Her voice was resolute, unwavering. There was no turning back now. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, and there was no going back to the shadows. The Phaethon Empire had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. In the council chamber, the Phaethon Empire's war preparations were underway. The Phaethon fleet was massing, ready to strike at Earth with all its might. The command was clear: destroy the humans, crush their warship, and restore the Empire's dominance. "We'll need to deploy the full fleet," the council leader said, his voice low. "We cannot risk the USS Artemis gaining any more ground." One of the council members, an alien whose form seemed to warp and shift like liquid metal, looked uncertain. "Are we sure this is the right course of action? If the humans have such advanced technology, if their warship is as powerful as we believe, a full assault might not be enough. We may be walking into a trap." "Then we'll fight smarter," the leader retorted. "We have the numbers. The humans may have a powerful weapon, but we have the resources and the experience to defeat them." The tension in the room was palpable. The Phaethon Empire had been the galaxy's most powerful force for centuries. They had crushed civilizations, eradicated species, and expanded their reach across countless star systems, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. The humans had been underestimated, their strength hidden behind a veil of apathy and neglect. The Council's indecision had only lasted a few minutes. They had made their choice. The Phaethon Empire would strike, and they would wipe humanity from the stars. Back aboard the USS Artemis, Hawke prepared for battle. The time for diplomacy had long passed. The Phaethon Empire had made their intentions clear. They would not stop until humanity was wiped out. "Captain," Lieutenant Brooks said, his voice tense, "we're picking up a massive fleet signature. It's the Phaethon Empire. They're here." Hawke's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve did not waver. "All hands, prepare for battle. Engage cloaking and defensive systems. We're not just going to survive this fight. We're going to make sure they never forget us." The crew responded immediately, their movements synchronized and efficient. The USS Artemis was no longer just a warship, it was a symbol of humanity's defiance. The old ship, long thought obsolete, was now a weapon of unimaginable power. It had the strength to face down an entire empire, and it would not back down. "Captain," another officer called out, "we have a full scan of their fleet. They've brought everything they've got." Hawke's eyes hardened. The Phaethon fleet was massive, a formidable force, but she knew that they had one advantage, the element of surprise. The USS Artemis had weapons they had yet to unveil, weapons that could level an entire fleet with a single strike. "Lock all weapons on their lead ship," Hawke commanded. "Prepare to fire on my mark." The tension was electric. The countdown was ticking. The moment of truth was at hand. Back in the council chamber, the Phaethon leader watched the incoming battle with growing unease. The last scans of the USS Artemis had revealed its full capabilities. The humans had weapons that defied comprehension. The warship they had once dismissed as a forgotten relic was now an unstoppable force. But it was too late to stop the attack now. "We're committed," the leader said, his voice cold. "Engage!" As the Phaethon fleet charged forward, the USS Artemis emerged from its cloak. The Phaethon ships never saw it coming. The first shot from the USS Artemis cut through the lead ship like a hot knife through butter. The explosion rippled through the fleet, and the Phaethon Empire was thrust into chaos. Humanity had made its stand. And now the galaxy would learn what it truly meant to face the power of Earth. The USS Artemis drifted through the void, cloaked and silent, the space around it pulsing with the stillness of impending conflict. The warship was a far cry from the massive armadas of the Phaethon Empire, but it held something far more deadly than raw size, surprise. Its weapon systems, powered by ancient human ingenuity, were a force that the galaxy had long since forgotten. On the bridge, Captain Elizabeth Hawke stood at the helm, her hands folded behind her back. The crew around her worked with quiet efficiency, their focus sharp. The time for hesitation had passed. The Phaethon Empire had underestimated humanity, and now it was time for them to pay the price. "Captain, their lead fleet is closing in," Lieutenant Brooks reported, his voice calm but tight with tension. "They've fully deployed all their ships. They're coming for us." Hawke nodded, her expression hardening. "We've prepared for this moment. No more surprises. Initiate the cloaking device and power up the weapon systems." The lights on the bridge dimmed as the ship's cloaking technology activated, rendering the USS Artemis invisible to the Phaethon sensors. The old ship was barely noticeable now, blending seamlessly with the void. The Phaethon fleet, confident in their overwhelming numbers, wouldn't see them coming. "Captain," the Comem's officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Phaethon flagship. They've requested a ceasefire." Hawke didn't hesitate. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the image of the Phaethon commander appeared. His face was a mixture of frustration and fear, his once imposing form now stripped of its usual arrogance. The leader of the Phaethon Empire was no longer speaking from a position of power. "Captain Hawke," the Phaethon leader said, his voice strained, "we've seen what you've done. We know you have the power to wipe us out, but there's no reason for this to go further. You've proven your point. Let's negotiate." Hawke didn't react immediately. Instead, she leaned forward, her eyes steady as she met the aliens. Gaze. "Negotiate. After everything your empire has done to my people, after you abandoned Earth to die in the ashes of your own making." The Phaethon leader looked uncomfortable, but pressed on. "We were wrong. We admit it. We underestimated. You let us form an alliance. We can offer you resources, protection, and influence over the galaxy. You will have the power to shape your own destiny. No more wars, no more struggles." For a brief moment, Hawke considered the offer. The Phaethon Empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy. An alliance with them would certainly give humanity a place at the table of galactic politics, But at what cost? No. Hawk's voice was firm, cutting through the silence. Your empire enslaved and destroyed countless species, and now you want to negotiate. With us, you think we'll just forget the centuries of suffering? The Phaethon leader's face twisted with frustration. You'll regret this decision, Captain. The galaxy won't forgive you. You've made enemies of us, and there are others waiting to pounce. Hawk stood up, her eyes locked on the screen. You've already made your move, and now it's too late. We won't be intimidated by threats. Humanity's survival is no longer in question. We're done surviving. Now we're going to thrive. With a final chilling look, Hawk cut the transmission. The decision had been made. The Phaethon Empire had sealed its fate, and there was no turning back. Captain, they're launching their first wave, Lieutenant Brooks reported. They're sending in their destroyers and fighter ships. Hawk took a deep breath, her fingers grazing the controls as she prepared the USS Artemis for the coming battle. The Phaethon fleet was formidable, but humanity had one advantage. They weren't bound by the rules that had governed galactic warfare for centuries. The USS Artemis was armed with technology that no one had expected, and it was time to show the galaxy just how powerful they were. Prepare all weapons, Hawk commanded. Lock on to their lead destroyers. Give them no chance to regroup. We've waited long enough for this moment. The USS Artemis powered up, its weapon systems activating with a hum of energy. The ship's cloaking device flickered briefly as it moved into position, its sleek, angular shape becoming visible to the Phaethon fleet for the first time in a long while. The battle was about to begin. The first salvo from the USS Artemis came as a streak of light, piercing the vacuum of space and slamming into the lead Phaethon destroyer. The ship's shields flared up for a moment before failing completely. The impact sent a shockwave through space, and the Phaethon ship disintegrated in an explosion that left nothing behind but floating debris. The Phaethon fleet responded immediately, launching a barrage of return fire. But the USS Artemis was already moving, faster and more agile than the Phaethon ships could track. The Artemis fired again, this time targeting their fighters, and in one coordinated strike wiped out half of the Phaethon's fighter wing. Target the remaining destroyers, Hawk ordered, her voice calm but filled with quiet fury. Don't let them regroup. We finish this now. The crew of the USS Artemis moved with practiced efficiency. The ship's weapons fired relentlessly, each shot precise and deadly, tearing through the Phaethon fleet like a hot knife through butter. The Phaethon ships, their prideful leaders now trembling in fear, tried to retaliate, but their efforts were futile. The USS Artemis was too fast, too powerful. For the Phaethon Empire, the realization was swift. They had miscalculated. They had expected an easy victory over humanity's last forgotten ship. They had expected Earth's warship to be weak, vulnerable, a relic of a species that had barely survived. But now, as the USS Artemis carved its way through their fleet, they understood the truth. Humanity had been lying in wait. And now, the consequences were unfolding. Captain, the rest of their fleet is in disarray, Lieutenant Brooks reported, his voice almost incredulous. They're retreating. We've destroyed more than half their ships in less than 30 minutes. Hawk nodded, her eyes still fixed on the tactical display. The battle wasn't over, but humanity had already proven their point. The Phaethon Empire was done, and as the last Phaethon ship scattered into the void, Hawk's face softened for the first time since the conflict began. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We've shown them our strength. Now the galaxy will know what humanity is capable of." The USS Artemis stood victorious, its weapons silent for the moment. But the battle was far from over. The Phaethon Empire had been dealt a devastating blow. But there were others in the galaxy who had their eyes set on humanity's rise. The war had only just begun, but Earth had awakened, and the stars would tremble under their feet. The remains of the Phaethon Empire's once proud fleet drifted in the vacuum of space, shattered and broken. The USS Artemis hovered over the wreckage, its hull still gleaming with the afterglow of its devastating weaponry. The battle had been swift, decisive, and brutal. Humanity's victory had come with a force that few in the galaxy had ever anticipated. The Phaethon Empire, despite its vast power and history of conquest, had crumbled in the face of humanity's unexpected strength. Captain Elizabeth Hawke stood silently on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she surveyed the aftermath. The crew moved about, completing their tactical assessments, but there was no celebration. The work was far from over. This battle, this victory, was just the first of many. Humanity had shown that they could defeat a galactic power. But now, the galaxy would watch as humanity's rise continued. "Captain," Lieutenant Brooks said, his voice quiet but filled with awe, "the fleet's retreating. We've completely wiped out their main force, the Phaethon Empire. They're done." Hawke's lips tightened into a thin line. She had been ready for this fight. But even as the Phaethon ships scattered into the dark expanse, the weight of the galaxy's history pressed down on her. The victory had come, but there were more challenges ahead. "Not done," Hawke replied, her voice resolute. "We've made them fall back, but we haven't won the war yet. This is just the beginning." Her gaze shifted toward the comms officer, who nodded, reading from his console. "Captain, we've received multiple transmissions from the Zorath Empire, the Kaldar Dominion, and others. They're all watching us now." "What are they saying?" Hawke asked, turning to face him. "Mostly, it's diplomatic posturing. They're offering alliances, but there's also an undercurrent of fear. They've seen what we can do, Captain. They know we're not just a weak species anymore. Some of them are reaching out for cooperation, while others are preparing for war." Hawke smiled grimly. "Let them come." She knew it wouldn't be easy. Humanity had just made its mark on the galaxy, but the challenges were far from over. The Phaethon Empire's defeat would echo across the stars, but it would also send ripples of panic and paranoia through the other empires. They would try to form alliances, they would negotiate, but beneath the surface, they feared humanity, they feared Earth. "We won't be caught off guard again," Hawke continued, her voice filled with determination. "Prepare for the next phase. Earth is no longer just a footnote. The galaxy will learn to respect humanity, or they will face our wrath." The crew acknowledged her words, their expressions set in quiet resolution. The USS Artemis was more than a ship now. It was a symbol. Humanity had shown that they could survive, they could fight, and they could conquer. The Phaethon Empire was only the beginning. Outside the USS Artemis, the stars glittered brightly, and Hawke knew the galaxy had already begun to change. It had seen the rise of Earth. And now no one would ever forget the name of humanity.